Hi, my name is Rebecca, and I am currently doing The Artist's Way, a 12-week program to make you a better creative person. Now, as I'm on week 2, I thought it would be a good time to sort of go over key terminologies, because the book uses a lot of these repeating words and phrases to refer to certain things. And that may not be obvious, but when you start doing The Artist's Way, you'll start talking in this terminology, and that might be hard to understand, especially when you're watching other people's videos and trying to learn a little bit more about this process. So I thought I would do a video on these common terms I think you should know before you start The Artist's Way. First one is, of course, morning pages. The morning pages are 3 pages handwritten or typed out of your thoughts right as you wake up. The author, Julia Cameron, recommends doing this pretty much as soon as you wake up. I've been doing morning pages for over a year and a half. I may have not called them the morning pages, but I do write every day. A sort of stream of consciousness, whatever I feel like early-ish. Now, as someone who's been doing this for a while, I would say it's not really like about the time, it's really about the time you put aside, if that makes sense. And so you can do your morning pages at night, you can do your morning pages in the afternoon, and you don't even have to write it out. I don't think this process is something that needs to be handwritten. Of course, with the digital age, writing physically is something a lot of us are not used to. Even in schools, people talk about the kids like their hands cramping. Let me tell you, yeah, my hand cramps when I write now too. I think it's just sort of our society and generation are moving away from handwrittenness. The point of this process is to make it as easy for you as possible to get your words down on a paper. I interpret that as writing, like typing for me on my laptop works. If you want to stick to the book and do some handwriting, absolutely fine. My handwriting is so terrible, I can't even read it back. So I find it most useful for me to write the pages. I have like a working Google Doc. I write there. So if I'm also like commuting or I'm out and I have a thought and I want to write, I can just go on Google Docs on my phone, open up the doc and write. So it's also really accessible if you say like forgot your journal or you're not at home and you don't have anything. So I really love doing the morning pages that way, but to each their own, but that's what the morning pages are. Next is the artist's date. Now I am going to read some definitions by Julia Cameron herself, just so we're all on the same page. An artist's date is a block of time, perhaps 2 hours weekly, especially set aside and committed to nurturing your creative consciousness, your inner artist. In its most primary form, the artist's date is an excursion, a play date that you pre-plan and defend against all interlopers. You do not take anyone on this artist date but you and your inner artist, aka your creative child. That means no friends, no lovers, spouses, children, no taggers on of any stripe. It's exactly as she said. Let's talk about shadow artists. Julia uses this term in her book. This is the first time I've sort of heard someone write about this personality type, so I think it's really useful. Too intimidated to become artists themselves, very often too low in self-worth or to even recognize they have an artistic dream, these people become shadow artists instead. Artists themselves, but ignorant of their true identity. Shadow artists are found shadowing the declared artist. Unable to recognize that they themselves may possess the creativity they so admire, they often date or marry people who actively pursue the art career they themselves secretly long for. Yeah, it's interesting. One, I've always been like an outwardly creative person, but I do think there's quite a lot of people that don't see themselves as creative, that like to be adjacent to creativity. And she says a lot of creative people are actually shadow artists, where they surround themselves with people they love and support creatively, but because they have a secret desire. Someone who was into filmmaking or had an interest in it and ended up marrying a director, they had that dream secretly for so long. So that's kind of how it comes out in certain people. God. Okay, this is a hot topic one because this is probably one of the main criticisms of The Artist's Way is Julia's use of God in the book and the creator. And as someone who is 1000% atheist, yes, I went to Catholic school, and that's how you know I'm really atheist. I do encourage you to buy the book and read this yourself, but if you are not a believer, or you're agnostic, you're atheist, or you just don't like the word God, she says to use it as God of creativity or good orderly direction or flow. It's more about the fact that creativity is a gift given to us that we are meant to use. That is what she is saying with the word God. She's not literally meaning God. And I'll read some of that just so you get some context yourself. The great creator, that sounds like some Native American god. That sounds too Christian, too New Age, too stupid, simple-minded, threatening. I know. Think of it as an exercise in open-mindedness. Just think, okay, great creator, whatever that is, and keep reading. Allow yourself to experiment with the idea there might be a great creator that you might get some use from freeing it from your own creativity. It is on the book. Come on, guys. We have to know what we're doing. The spiritual path to higher creativity. It's not just the path to creativity, it's the spiritual path. People who are atheists do this. She says it's okay for us atheists to do this, and she actually encourages us to. I would say some of the exercises, like giving, like if you a pie chart of your life and giving a wedge to spirituality, I just like didn't do that. So I just gave a wedge to something else, and it's fine. You can work around it. I don't love the way it is written, even though she says it's open to interpretation. She does default into using this. I don't love it, but if you're worried about it being like God Christian centric, it really is not, I'm telling you. On the spiritual side, she does talk about synchronicity. It's an important term for this book and this 12-week process. Essentially, it's that if you leap, a net will appear. And I know that's very privileged to even say. I'm saying what she said. But it's sort of like, if you go on a different path, the path will create itself for you. You just sort of have to do something you've never done before. And the belief that the universe will be aligning to this new sort of path you've taken. In a more abstract way, yeah, it's the universe expanding to the change that you have done. Let's leave it there. I can see myself already going back to this, and I'm on week 2, is the bargaining period. This choppy growth phase is followed by a strong urge to abandon the process and return to life as we know it. In other words, a bargaining period. People are often tempted to abandon the course at this point. I call it a creative U-turn. Recommitment to the process next triggers the free fall of major ego surrender. I'm gonna stop there just because I think giving up and wanting to give up is really normal. And you just have to kind of go through that process. It's like when you're running and you get a stitch in your side, but then your gym teacher tells you that if you keep running, the stitch will disappear, which absolutely makes no sense. But it does. Yeah, this is like the stitch in your side. That's my metaphor, by the way. That's not Julia's. Which brings us to the censor. You can think of your censor as your internal critic, your internal perfectionist, just the person in your head, me, saying that you can't do this and you're not good enough. And she brings up this term, the censor, quite often as a representation of like our negative thoughts and our anxieties around doing this. We are victims to our internalized perfection, a nasty internal and eternal critic, the censor, who resides in our left brain and keeps us in a constant stream of subversive remarks that are often disguised as the truth. If you haven't done it by now, you never will. You can't even spell. What makes you think you can be creative? On and on and on. Yeah, they get this. Of course. You can't be creative without this sort of sound in the back of your head telling you can't do this. At least not me. On that, she talks about the brain as 2 different sides, the logic and the artistic brain. Obviously, the logic brain is our sensible side. It's telling us what we should do. And our artistic brain is the inventor side of our brain, our inner child. Why is it important to even know what the logic side and then your artistic side of your brain even means in this? She says because of the morning pages. The morning pages teach logic brain to stand aside and let the artist brain play, which I think is important to kind of acknowledge that you may have thoughts that do make sense logically, but the point is to let the logic aside, right? We're kind of daydreaming, and it's leaning into the daydream instead of just dipping your toe in and feeling the water. You're diving in, right? Filling the well, stocking the pond. This one's hard for me just in terms of a fishery. I don't fish, but I get it, you know? The whole point is that we must nourish our creative self through inspiration. So the morning page is sort of getting your artistic brain to work and take a forefront over your logic brain, where the filling the well, stocking the pond is the artist dates. Yeah, so you can always see these terminologies. I think they're kind of confusing, but they work together, so you sort of need these vocabularies to understand each other. This is what Julia says about filling the well. In filling the well, think magic, think delight, think fun. Do not think duty. Do not do what you should do. Spiritual sit-ups like reading a dull but recommended critical text. Do what intrigues you. Explore what interests you. Think mystery, not mastery. I think people overcomplicate what filling the well can be. She says herself, chopping vegetables while cooking could be filling the well. It's the same way where Einstein got like his best ideas in the shower. It's this repetitive therapeutic sort of movement in the small everyday. Your brain sort of turns off when you're doing something repetitive. And I think the point here is that it could be really anything. She says repetitive activities like showering, swimming, scrubbing, shaving, steering a car are all regular repetitive activities that may tip us over from our logic brain into our creative artist brain. We have to talk about core negatives. So core negatives are things we believe artists are. Now this can vary. I would say this process started in the 90s, so do bear in mind this is very, I think, even dated to 2026. I'm not going to be obtuse and pretend like I don't know what the stereotype of an artist is, because I absolutely do. And Julia herself was the reason this whole process started is because she was an alcoholic and she was also a writer and she wasn't able to drink anymore, so she didn't know what to do. She was like, I can't write without drinking. And this is how the artist way started, actually. She like taught herself, she was the first student. This is what worked for her, and then it worked for other people, and so on and so forth. But one of those core negative beliefs is that artists or writers must drink, or they must be tortured, or they must be, you know, promiscuous if you're, you know, a woman or a man. And I'm not gonna pretend none of those are like found in actuality. I went to art school. I know some of these are true. These core negative beliefs of artists can be changed by you. It's your own internal thing. And like, no matter, you know, listen, let's say you're not an alcoholic, right? And let's say you're not promiscuous, like you still believe artists smoke, you know, real artists smoke a cigarette after or something like that. Yeah, I think everyone holds their own personal beliefs of art, and like while we've progressed so much as a society that I think we are overall more accepting and opening to different types of people, I would say there was a stereotype for a very long time that these sort of people were drawn to the creative arts and they were the outliers of society. Some negative beliefs are like artists are drunk, crazy, broke, irresponsible, loners, doomed, unhappy, born and not made. And she tries to get you to think of it differently, where artists can be sober, sane, responsible, user-friendly. I did my master's in enterprise and entrepreneurship, and for the longest time, I thought entrepreneurs were like Mark Zuckerberg, right? They're just like white males in like a hoodie. There are so many different types of entrepreneurs that I just like simply did not know about. Through this, you get to learn a lot about different types of people who are artists. And now because of the internet, you get to see lots of different shades of artistic people, which I am so grateful for. But yeah, there is that sort of like Heath Ledger belief that you must be tortured to be good. She says that's not true. You could be happy and be good. Another term is creative recovery, which is basically the skepticism that you have about your creative self. She just uses this term kind of often. And then Crazymakers, which is quite a ridiculous term in my opinion, but it's just selfish people, really. People who do not serve you while you're going through this process. That was from the first 2 weeks. I'm sure there's so much more terminology, but I see her kind of constantly bringing up these terms and referring to them. If you're going through this process and you're also kind of looking for the right words and the terminology, and maybe you don't have the book, I think this would be really helpful to know these terms. Of course, you can do this without the book, but I do recommend giving it a read, especially because there are weekly exercises. In the exercises, she does have sort of categories like time travel, where you're like looking back in your life, imaginary lives where you're sort of imagining different futures, writing letters. So those are, I think, quite self-explanatory. But yeah, she also categorizes the exercises in these terms as well. If you are starting your artist way, good luck. See you on the other side. And I hope this video was helpful. If you're interested in how the artist way has been going for me, feel free to follow me here on YouTube or on any of my social medias. And I do weekly vlogs. Like I said, right now I'm on week 2. So if you see this and I'm done, wow, that's amazing. And I hope this helps you with your artist way journey as well.